I'm Maryann Reissig, and I live in Rochester, New York. Well, I actually don't live there. I live outside a little bit, but St. John Fisher College, I've worked there for a little while, and I'm on Twitter, and the slides from today will be at that URL at the bottom of the screen. And I have some code today too that I will be sharing. I'm going to put it on GitHub. I need to sanitize it a little bit, but once I do that, I'll put it up there and I'll add it to that page so that there's some resources there that I'll talk about today. That all the links will be on that page as well as the slides too. About me, I have 7 years at St. John Fisher College, 20 years, 20 plus years in higher ed. So I worked at a couple other institutions of various sizes. I'm a WPCampus organizer this year, and I'm also an organizer for WordCamp Rochester, and I've been doing that for the last couple of years. October 5th, if anybody wants to come to Rochester, woo, we got a great lineup. It's awesome. About St. John Fisher, we have 2,600 full-time and 200 part-time undergrad students, as well as 1,000 graduate students. So we're in the small range on the local college level. A lot of universities and colleges in the Rochester, New York area. So we're kind of right in the middle. So an overview of what I'm going to go over today. I'm going to talk about the history of web forms on our campus, and I'm going to talk about what is Gravity Forms. How about how to wrangle all that data, wrangling all the data coming in from all the forums, and what's next for us, how this has been successful, and what are the next steps for all the projects that we've been working on. So, forms. They were everywhere. So, does anybody in the room use Gravity Forms? Oh, awesome. Okay, so I don't have to really go through what Gravity Forms is. Everybody knows. Any other systems that you use?
Caldera.
Caldera? Really? Okay. And
I'm also
on Caldera. Okay. Any other ones?
Formidable.
What is it?
Formidable.
Formidable. Yep. And which one?
Woohoo.
Woohoo. Yes. Gotcha. Okay. So we have all different kinds of forms. They were everywhere in our. They had forms in our old CMS. They had forms for advancements, had forms in, what's that system? iModules, there's forms there, Fire Engine Red, they were all over the place. So getting that data was a little hairy for a while. So we discovered we needed a better builder and a better process for data collection. So the builder came in with the comm side of our web team needed a better tool to use. And we needed to figure out how to process all the data that we were getting. So, you know that Talking Head song, The Road to Nowhere? It's a great song. There's a link in there. You can go listen to it afterwards. I'm not going to play it because of the bad Wi-Fi in here. So, enter Gravity Forms. Gravity Forms is a paid WordPress plugin with a drag and drop user interface. In 2015, I created a WordPress site, a single WordPress instance. For forms, solely for forms. That's all this website did was the web team could go in and build forms, and they link to those forms all over other various websites. So 3 years later, we went from a single WordPress site to a multi-site with about 150 forms, and we're growing even more forms. The reason why I went from a single WordPress site to a multi-site was one caveat with the capabilities with Gravity Forms is that if you have access to the entries, you have access to all the entries. So we couldn't give, not that we didn't trust our users, but they would have access to maybe some sensitive form data that they shouldn't have. And we didn't want to put that on the users to know where they needed to go. So we split it out into a multi-site so they can control who has access to what data. And we kind of go by only give our users access to the data that they absolutely need. Because why make it harder for everybody else? So the success of the form site created new problems to solve. So I'm going to talk about one of the problems today. And I call it a good problem because it was a good problem in that it helped us get to know people, and as Brian said yesterday, we made friends. So this is why I like this problem. This ended up being a really good one. And I'm going to try, I don't know if I can pull it. I'm not going to pull it up right now because of the Wi-Fi issue. Yeah.
Just stepping back to the previous slide.
Sure.
So this is so you have these instances in multi-site, and so you link from the main website, and you literally link them over to a page on a different domain, and they're filling out the form.
Yes.
Does that page have navigation?
That page has, when they hit submit, there's a link to go back to the main site.
Okay.
So it has there isn't general, like the main website navigation on it. They did some data analysis, and really, even with the old site and the old forms, when students are looking, prospective students are looking for those forms, they kind of leave the site anyway after they find they're going there looking for those forms. But we have links back to the site so they can get back to the main site from where they came. Yeah. And that's good. We've talked about maybe embedding the forms on the main site. Our main, our main site is not in WordPress, so there's not an easy way right now to embed. But they've been quite happy with the way that it works now. So, but that's a good question. So we started with we call them the request more forms. So we have 3 request more forms. So a prospective student comes to our website, either they're incoming freshman, a transfer student, or graduate student. We have 3 different forms for those audiences to fill it out and get more information about whatever program they specify. So we ask the 3 audiences a little bit different information about themselves, so that they get better information. And if they're graduate students are looking for different information than an incoming freshman is. So they launched these forms, and they were really successful. The data started rolling in via email only. So as you can imagine, got a little overwhelming. So our processing center, we have a data processing center on our campus. Who has a data processing center? You have one? Does anybody else have data processing that does all of their applications? Yeah. Okay. So it's the folks that as students come in, they do all the mailings on campus. They do all the electronic data, all the different data feeds that come into the college. They go through this department. So they were dealing with these emails one at a time, manually, copying, pasting. I don't know what they were doing. I'm not even sure they even really felt comfortable that they were getting all the data that was coming in, because it was so overwhelming. So we had to find a way to provide the data in a standardized format for upload into our SIS. So we're a banner school, and we use a tool called Axiom, which will do uploads into the system. And it's very, you have to have very specific kinds of files, and the data has to be very clean in order for it to go in properly. So let's work together. I started meeting with admissions and the information coordinator. So these are folks that work in the data processing center, and they do all the data coordination across all these departments. And during this process discovery, I learned way more about data processing than I ever wanted to in my life. But it's been really good, because now I understand where the perspective they're coming from, and I'm able to say, hey, I can help you fix that, or I can help you make that process a little more efficient. The big part of this, we started using collaboration tools. Google Drive has been invaluable for us. I hate email. I really do. I hate it. So I didn't want an email thread with 4 people with 300 emails. You all know that. It gets overwhelming. So I set up for every one of these forms, I set up a Google folder that corresponds with that form. And we just started brainstorming and having them explain in words what their process was, step by step, and what they wanted to accomplish with it. And what was really awesome about it was that it helped them discover, oh, why are we still doing that? Do we still need to do that? So it was able to be a catalyst for more conversations about their data. And the other great thing about it is that it writes the process documentation from the end user perspective, and it's done. The process is done. So The fun begins. We're going to talk about how we can script the process to get clean data out of Gravity Forms, how we can automate the process so we can minimally process it on a schedule, and done? Are we really done? I would argue we're never done, but so it's the web. Are we ever done? So on the scripting part, I first tried to use a front-end tool called Gravity View. So I'm a big fan of Gravity Flow and Gravity View, and so we tried to use this tool and to set up these specialized views so that the processing center folks could just log in and get the data that they needed. But what happened was it ended up being a whole bunch of steps. So they had to go find the link, they had to log in, then they had to navigate to the page they needed to go to, and was there a password on the page, and then they didn't know, do I need CSV, do I need PDF? Like, we tried to make it as easy as possible, but it just wasn't exporting the data the way that they needed it. And Gravity Forms has a lot of data on the that it will export extraneous data that they didn't want, so it didn't really work for us. And it was a whole lot of steps, so it wasn't really making the process any easier for them. So the Gravity Forms API proved to be the best choice to be able to schedule a standard export file that could be used by our processing center to get the data in the time they needed in the format that worked for that import. And really, talking about using an API, we can just set it up and get exactly what they need with nothing extra. So Gravity Forms, the API is really easy to set up. You install Gravity Forms, you go into the settings and go to the REST API and you enable it. You check the box here and then your keys will show up and you can start using it. One thing to note, if you're going to use the API, you do need to set up. We use Active Directory integration for our WordPress sites, but with this you have to impersonate a user in your system. So I set up a local user that has read-only access. All of these forms, all of this process is read-only. I just go in and grab data. I don't do any data manipulation from the API. So you can name it whatever you want. You know, I have a standard API user. It has all it can do is read data. So let's automate it. You can see up here, this is my cron job list up at the top here. I built a small PHP app that uses the Gravity Form API and pulls the data specified into a custom CSV file. So for all of these forms, I have a separate PHP file that I go in and pull out data from each. It logs into the website and grabs the data. And then the cool thing about this is that in the script, it creates a CSV file and then it drops it out onto a network shared drive. So the data processors don't even have to log into WordPress. All they have to do is open up their network drive and find and grab the files, and they can take those files and do the upload into whatever they want to do with it. And then the cron jobs control the timing of the data extract. Does everybody know what cron jobs are? Yeah, we're good? Okay. So I set up the data intervals. I control when they run, but also inside the application with the API, I can create intervals so that it's only pulling the data out of the form within the intervals that I specify. I want to make sure I put, yeah, okay. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to pull up this, the application and show it to you. It's really simple, and essentially the cron jobs, working with the group of data processors, they told me I want the data on, like, this set of forms I want Wednesday morning every 7 days. And this set of forms, we want them twice a week. So we set them up, I'm able to set them up in however they want that data. And then they can schedule when they do all this work. Okay, so bear with me. Hopefully it'll work. Here. Okay, maybe not. Oh, there we go. Okay, so if I mirror this, will that work better, do you think? It's all right. I'm just gonna go for it here. So anyway, probably can't. I think I'm on the wrong side here. There we go. Okay. All right. So this one is the grad export file, and essentially, if you've worked with APIs before, there's a key you set up a hash for security. I'm using version 1 of the API. They have version 2 out as well, so whatever one works for you, you can do. And what you can see, this is the actual script. So see if I can get this any bigger. There we go. Okay. So there are a bunch of settings at the top. You tell it which form you want, and that you want the entries. And then this goes through, it does a signature, and then there's an API call, and this is where the API gets built on the fly with my specified intervals, and then it just goes down, it pulls the JSON data out, and then I have, this is what I worked with the processors. They set up a special Axiom file, so this upload file. They said, this is the format I need. So these are all the header, I built the header row, and then it pulls in the data, writes the CSV file, and then you can see the keys here. Those are the keys of each of the form IDs, the field IDs. So you just give it the field IDs. So it's a little bit of setup, it's a little bit of work on our side, on the technical side. But it makes their life a lot easier on the other end. And then this is I changed to get everything to match up. And then it drops the CSV file in the spot where I tell it to, and then it closes it, and it's done. So it's super, super simple for every single form. We'll do this. All right. So can we get back to? Yeah, all right, cool. Okay, so are we done? Never done. So more Gravity Form API uses. So as we were going through this discovery process, we had one more, we had another form come in that they didn't want CSV files, they wanted PDF files. So we have internal applications that students can log into a Gravity form and apply for an internal program, a nursing program, School of Ed, that kind of thing. And we use document imaging, and what they want to do is they want these PDFs, they want the student to fill out this application, copy and paste their essay, which we don't keep those essays in the database, right? We don't keep that stuff in Banner. So they wanted a PDF, and I said that was the next kind of problem. Can you figure out a way to give us those PDFs in the same way? Can you drop all these PDFs automatically onto the network drive? So I said, well, let's see what I can do. So I'm going to stay here for a minute. So Gravity PDF is a free plugin. It's not built by Gravity Forms. It's built by another developer. So I'm using Gravity PDF to do the same process. There's another script, and essentially I set up a specific PDF that they can go and grab, and it does the same thing. It does the call out to the database, it pulls back the data. It has a special key for every PDF that I can automatically generate, and then it just pulls the file down. And I rename the file so that the file matches the student ID and the name and their email address or something. So there's a key in there that they can go into that folder and say, oh, this PDF belongs with this student. So it just totally makes their workflow go really a lot quicker. Data retention, the one thing about that's really nice about Gravity Forms now since GDPR, Gravity Forms does your data retention for you. So there are settings. Okay, here we go. I'm going to click it again. Oh, darn it. Hang on. I haven't logged in It must be, let's see if I log it. Yes, okay, it worked. Woo! So there is, if you go into Gravity Forms, there's a personal data setting, and you can choose how to deal with your data. And I actually delete entries permanently, automatically, and for every form, they tell me how long. I said, do you want me to keep this for 30 days? Do you want me to keep this for 60 days? And the history behind this was, before we set all this up, we had like 6 or 8 months of data in there, which really you don't want to keep that data, because there is some PII there that you don't want out there in a web database. So that's a part of this process now. We ask them, how long should we keep this data for you? And then once they tell us, we set this, and then it just deletes on a schedule all by itself. We don't have to touch it. So that's one really nice thing. Yeah.
As a warning, there's a trash option in there.
Yeah.
It does not work like the regular WordPress trash, where things get automatically deleted after 30 days. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
It'll stay in the trash forever until you have to get it back.
Right. And that's the second option there. Yeah. So that's why if you choose that trash, it'll stay there forever. You have to actually go in and manually empty the trash in Gravity Forms. Okay, worked. All right, so I just want to talk a little bit about security on this. All of these little PHP, all of this scripting, all of this application work, it all happens behind our firewall. That's sitting on a production server that does not have access to the outside world. So you have to figure out what would work best for you on your campus for security, on how you want to run these things. But this all sits behind our firewall, and I personally wouldn't want to run this out there, because of it is personal data some personal data that's coming across. So I'm happy that it's all happening, behind some secure walls, and everything's on HTTPS too. So there's a couple of checks there. And that's it. So nothing is accessible off campus. So as the process has evolved, the demand has grown. There are 5 projects here, and the request more, there's actually 2 more of those. But while I've been at WPCampus, I have 2 more projects that I'm going home to set this up for. But what's been really great is that now, since we started working with admissions and the data processors, it's like, now we're all friends, and we have this great relationship, and now this is in their arsenal, and they can say, hey, we can go talk to Maryann and her team and get this in the project queue and say, hey, we have these 3 more forms that we want to build, and this is what we want to do with the data. So this is being worked into the process. And so many types of forms, not just these forms that are on our main site, but I said the internal program applications, nursing, School of Education, our enrollment profile form, which is a huge form that every incoming freshman is required to fill out. It helps their admission advisor to place them into the right classes. So this is a big deal for incoming freshmen, and they want to process the data this way, which I thought was pretty interesting, that they don't want to just get it over to their advisor. They actually want to put this into a system somehow. And like I said, it just gives me more opportunities to work with them, and because I love them now. They're my friends, and they know that we work together well, and this is all about, making friends and being part of the community on your campus. So lessons learned, of course, there's always those. Set up your forms properly on the front end to send data in a usable format for your student information system. We had a problem with term codes not going over correctly, and major codes weren't set up right. So your key value pairs in Gravity Forms, it's a little bit of work on the front end, but it's super easy in Gravity Forms. You can actually copy and paste a comma delimited key value pair right into when you're creating the form. And that's something that I've worked with our web team to, the comms folks who build all these forms. That's been a big learning opportunity for them to learn how all this back-end data works. So now they understand what a term code is and our major codes. So every schools are different, but if a student sees nursing on the front end, we want to send over NURS. And then in doing that, it's better data collection. I don't have to do any data transformation once we get the data. So that makes it comes out clean the first time. This was a fun one. We had data loss during our maintenance windows. So Sunday morning is our server maintenance windows. So what happened was, I think it only happened once, but while our server was being upgraded, it was supposed to run one of the cron jobs, and they didn't get the data didn't come over. So I'm glad that the data processors were actually paying attention. We're like, we don't have any data for Saturday and Sunday. So I went back in and we actually changed our whole process. We don't extract any data on the weekends now. Anything that comes in over the weekend, we pick it up Monday morning so that nothing gets lost, because you don't want to lose a potential student. Don't deliver empty files. So when we set up one of the first ones, it was dumping an empty CSV file into this folder, and I went out and I realized, and Natasha calls me and says, "Hey, there's 28 empty files in this directory. Is that right?" And so I went out and looked, and I was like, "Oh yeah, there's no checks," and so I highly recommend, if there are no data entries, just don't do it. Just stop the process. So I learned that lesson. And they also know that if there are no files in the directory, then there's no data to process. Streamlining this data for them has saved them hours of time, hours of work every week. She gave me some statistics. She said that they process about 65,000 prospective students every year, which that's a huge number for a college our size. So if I can make that process easier and a little bit, make them a little happier with getting that data, that is success for both of our teams. And it just has really helped them move their processes forward into more efficient systems. And their whole group now down there, we all know each other. We all know we can ask each other questions when we don't understand something. It's been really great. So to recap, use Gravity Forms API to extract data from your forms. Automate it. Use cron jobs and the API intervals to pull data on a schedule that works for you. It's so customizable. You can do it however you want to do it. And then keep improving your process by working with your data processors and finding new ways to help them get the data that they need from your web applications. So I'm going to leave you with this quote. I feel like on our colleges, on our campuses, sometimes we don't feel the love and appreciation of the people that we work with. And it's in doing this projects with these new people, we really learned a lot about each other and have built really great relationships, and it's made our whole community better. So thank you. And before I take questions, if you have any, I wanted to just say that if anybody is interested in our mentoring program, I'm working with Jen on that. And I'm up here today because they mentored me to do it. So I feel like this is the first time I've spoken at WPCampus. So thank you for being, the first people to sit in front of me. So does anybody have any questions? Oh, okay. Let's start. Mike, you first? Okay.
What about attachments?
For what kind of, on any of the forms that are using, I don't think we're handling any attachments. There aren't any. If they are, I could pull it out. I could still get it. It would just be a field, and we can extract that as a field. Yeah.
Can I add it? I actually do a lot of what you're doing already.
Yeah.
And the way that I handle attachments is I just, just plug the URL, which points to the download directory. And then,
Yeah.
if you need anything else, I built something to copy the file out during the export process.
Yeah.
The URL is usually enough.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Go ahead.
So I'm curious about your solution about, since, we have the permissions issue with the entries, where, if you have the ability to see entries, you can see all the entries.
Right.
And you briefly mentioned that you had, were you talking about, you'd split out the instances of Gravity?
So what I did was everything was in a single WordPress install, and I moved it to a multi-site. So only the people, and it's split out by department.
Gotcha. So you have an instance per department, basically.
Right. And then they can go in and build whatever forms they want.
It just would add that granular permissions to that.
I'm so with you. I have
Seriously.
asked Gravity Forms. I've asked the company multiple times about that. So I don't know.
Why like editors and all that,
What's that?
Do you have like editors?
Right. So there's only one permission. It's GF. What is it? Something entries is one of the view entries. That's what it is. So there's nothing more granular than that. So either you have it or you don't, and it applies to every single form. Because we're applying this Gravity Forms. I don't think it wasn't built for what we're doing. We're kind of using it in a different way than maybe was originally intended, but it works great. So okay, I'll go this way. So go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for framing all this in working collaborativly with people on your campus and strengthening relationships.
Yeah.
I was curious if your institution recognizes this kind of cross team or silo breaking. Collaboration in any ways. I know that kind of working harmoniously is its own reward.
Right. I guess there hasn't been, other than so I asked when I got this talk accepted, I actually asked the processing center, I asked them for feedback, and they both wrote me like a book about how much this has helped and improved their process. So we haven't had there's nothing anything specific from higher ups, but they know what's going on. I mean, all of our directors, because all these projects had to go through those directors in order to actually happen. So they're all aware of it. They all know that we're working together, and they know that we're happier because of it. So that's good for me at this point. Yeah. Mike.
So when you have this multi-site and people are creating forms, the form creators have an admin role?
The form creators have, yes,
they're not there to make forms, they're just there to look at.
Right. There's only, there's a small set of people who are there to create forms. And most of the form creation is done by our comms team, the ones that actually do it. But the folks who have access to it in the departments, they're going in to look at the data. They're going in to get the data.
But nothing
generally.
Will stop them from making a form.
Right. Nothing. Right. But for the most part, they don't want to do it. They want someone to create the form for them. So we have a couple people on campus who will go in and create their own forms, but for the most part, they want Jody and Aaron to build them for them. And they have a whole process for that. They have a request process to do that. And we're small enough that we get away with it.
Anything with the Gravity Forms, WPCLI, we used to have literally 250 forms.
Yeah.
Because of that permission reason, because this is prior to my tenure at the institution, but they actually wrote function to give certain roles access to Gravity Forms.
Oh, okay.
not only should
Right.
they be doing that, but they were horrible, unusable. So for us, we blocked that down, and we have this same problem, which is they want access to a CSV, like for instance, Res Light.
Yeah.
Who's staying over Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
We want to download the CSV.
Right.
The way we've solved that problem is for stuff that's internal,
Yeah.
right, which I consider that to be internal.
Yeah.
We push them to Google Forms, which is, it's
Right.
not a good place to push somebody.
Right.
And I have often thought about doing what you have done, which
Yeah.
is create a separate instance.
And in that, I'll give you an example of how I use Gravity View. Because if you get Gravity View and you buy the data tables add-on to that, what you can do is set up a custom page for those people, and you can put a password on the page, or you can make the page only available to who, based on their login. But that gives you, with the data tables add-on, it gives you the ability to download a CSV directly from the front end.
I wish I had known that before I made enemies. You're making friends, I'm making enemies.
Oh no! So yeah, I would definitely check out Gravity View, because that's and another example of that is we have this huge student event every year. It's called the Teddy Dance for Love, and they are it's a 24-hour dance marathon, and it raises money for Camp Good Days, which is for kids who are affected by cancer. And they raise, like last year, over $100,000. It's an amazing event they do every year. And so I run the registration, and we do it with Gravity Forms, and that's exactly what I do for them. Is they have all the registration, and then I put all of the data available on a Gravity View page where they can just go and grab it to make their badges and to make all their stuff. And that's one use of that, because those students really just need to log in once or twice to the system. They don't need to navigate around and try to find the entries and do the export and all that stuff. And just give them a view page.
But actually, I like your solution, that I would go your route first.
Yeah.
Because it's one less plugin, right?
Right, correct. Yeah. And that is that's the thing for this too. And this is ongoing incoming data all the time. It's not just something that happens, one time a year or 2 times a year, whatever. This is ongoing all the time. And that's why scheduling it and getting it on that scheduled and making sure that the data is not duplicated, unless the student hits submit twice. There's always going to be those cases. But, just getting that really defined on what they need and when they need it, it really helps them to make all their processes more efficient. Yeah. All right.
So the script, so you have to.
So go ahead.
So you have to do that for each and every form?
Yes. So there's a process for each form, because they're not all the same. Like they have different IDs on each field, that kind of thing. So yeah, each form is a custom application. Yeah. Do you have a question? Okay.
So to comment what you said about creating the custom page, because the entry thing was such an issue for me. I have a bunch of staff that does just some data entry, like statistics type of stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I inherited, there's like 24 of these forms that just do data capture.
Uh-huh.
And it's mixed in with forms that are more like kind of user facing. And
right, yeah.
What I ended up doing is I created a plugin to instantiate like, admin pages.
Yep.
Which I could then do granular permissions on.
Yep.
And I didn't use Gravity View, but I used another plugin called WP Data Tables.
Okay. Yep.
Which is very similar and also has
that's based on the data tables add-on is based on that, because there's an underlying data tables is the
library.
Yes, that library. So it's all based on that.
I learned that.
That's cool. Yeah.
I'm sort of rolling my own now, because
the
jQuery thing does most of the work. It's free.
Right. Yep.
But that's the route I went instead, because I'm not really able to do a multi-site for the library.
Right. Gotcha.
But that permissions thing.
Yeah. And the other thing with Gravity Forms, get the developer license. It's like $99 a year. It's not that expensive. So, yeah. Well, anybody else?
So,
Yeah, sure.
So about Gravity Flow, do y'all use Gravity Flow any within your workflow?
Yes, we use Gravity Flow extensively.
So it still works with,
Yes, it does. Actually, these forms, these data collection forms, I don't, right now, the project I'm going back to has, is gonna have a workflow on it, but, excuse me, none of the ones that these are built for, they don't have a workflow on them. But we use Gravity Flow extensively. So, my coworker has done a ton of development with Gravity Flow. Yeah. Yes.
Our accessibility office gave us a little bit of static over using Gravity PDF.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not with for any reason, but you gotta make sure that those are accessible.
Okay.
You know what I mean? How is that? Is it?
I actually, because this is all back end, those PDFs actually get scanned into our document imaging. So I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
It's never,
not your problem at that time.
well, it's not, but it's also not, it's not forward facing. It's all internal. For the only people who access that are admissions advisors and that kind of thing. So I guess that's something I do. I should actually look into that to see how they're coming out of document imaging.
Right.
I would be more afraid of the what's it called, active. I can't remember the program that's used to access it out of Banner. I can't think of it right now.
I'm sure that's some Java.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is, and it's. I would be interested. I should see how that plays out once everything goes down the workflow. You know, it gets from our data over to Banner, and then they on the front end. How are they using it? So that's an interesting. I gotta check that out. Thank you. Okay, are we all set?
Let's give Maryann a big round of applause.